Sadness and outrage tonight after another school shooting in America.
Good afternoon, this is News 2, and we're following a breaking story today, a shooting at a high school in Moulton, Colorado.
There's word potentially multiple children have been killed. This happened at the Robb Elementary School in the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District.
2012 Colorado movie theater massacre.
7 bodies were discovered in Oklahoma.
2 mosques in Christchurch were targeted, the country's worst mass shooting ever.
"16-year-old Cathy Marie Moulton disappeared from her town of Portland, Maine on September 24, 1971. At the time of her disappearance, Cathy was 5'4" and weighed roughly 98 pounds. She had blue eyes that were framed with thick glasses and straight light brown hair. Cathy also wore braces. By all accounts, Cathy was described as a deeply caring and kind-hearted person. She was born on June 28, 1955 to her parents Claire and Lyman Moulton. Cathy also had 2 younger sisters, named Pamela and Kimberly. Their parents were said to be firm but equally loving, and it seems that Cathy inherited her kindness from them. Cathy was known to spend a lot of her time babysitting for family friends, or often hanging out with people who needed the company. Cathy's mom, Claire, recalls, quote, "She seemed interested in helping people. She was down the street all the time sitting with a friend of the family who was paralyzed. It was amazing how well they could communicate considering he had a speech impairment." Cathy would also reportedly hang out with the elderly who lived nearby. Overall, Cathy seemed like a very sweet and selfless girl, the type of person that had a whole life of love and compassion ahead of her, someone who would have gone on to help people. The summer of 1971 was an eventful one for the Moulton family. During that time, Cathy's father, Lyman, took time away from the business that he owned, and the family embarked on an 81-day road trip. They traveled all across the United States and Mexico. The trip was ongoing during June, so Cathy actually spent her 16th birthday on the road. Her parents let her choose any item from anywhere they visited to be her gift. Her choice ended up being a small leather handbag while the family were visiting Mexico. This trip was the first time that Cathy had traveled outside of her state of Maine, and she really enjoyed it. So much so that when she returned to school in the fall, her close friends claimed that she seemed so much happier than she had in the past. Friday, September 24th, 1971, was an exciting day for Cathy. She had been looking forward to this day for a while now. She was planning to attend a dance with several of her friends, which was being held at the local YMCA. Cathy loved music and swing dancing, so naturally she was thrilled to go out that night. She had even made her own outfit to wear to the dance. After attending study hall at school, Cathy asked her dad to take her to the downtown shopping area of Portland. She needed a new pair of pantyhose to wear with her outfit for the dance that night, and wanted to go pick some up. Her father agreed to drive her. Mrs. Moulton asked Cathy to pick up toothpaste while she was out, and gave her enough cash for the toothpaste, and also to catch the bus home after she was done. She was dropped off on the corner of Cumberland and Forest Avenue around 1:15 p.m. Her father watched her as she made her way up the street. She shopped for a while, and then met up with a friend named Carol Starbird at a local shop called Starbird Music, which I assume was owned by Carol's family, unless the name is a complete coincidence. Anyway, the two chatted about the dance, as they were planning to meet there later on that night. Cathy also mentioned to Carol that she had spent the money her mother gave her to catch the bus, so she would be walking home. She explained to Carol that she was going to go home for dinner and a quick shower, and that she would see her later that night. After saying her goodbyes, Cathy departed from the music store at about 5:30 p.m. and was last seen walking down Forest Avenue wearing a navy blue coat and carrying her recent birthday present, the leather handbag she picked out in Mexico. Her walk home was only about 1.5 miles, so she should have been able to make it pretty quickly. Cathy would never make it to meet up with her friends at the dance that evening. In fact, she wouldn't even make it home for dinner as planned. A little later, Cathy's parents grew worried when she didn't arrive home for dinner. "In our family, we always called when we were going to be late," Mrs. Moulton stated. Cathy hadn't called that night, so when she missed dinner, her parents quickly grew anxious. Around 6:30, Mrs. Moulton called the police and explained to them that her daughter had never gone anywhere without letting someone know, and that she was wanting to file a missing persons report. Very commonly back then, and still even today, police would try to make you wait a certain amount of time before they would file a missing persons report. According to Mrs. Moulton, the police laughed at her and told her she needed to wait 72 hours, or 3 days, before they would take action. This obviously did not go over well with her parents, and Mr. Moulton swiftly made his way down to the police department to handle it in person. At first, the person at the desk attempted to, quote, explain the facts of life, and proceeded to deny her father to file a report. After his continued persistence, according to Mr. Moulton, they finally allowed him to fill out a missing persons report to, quote, shut him up. Unfortunately, Cathy's story was not made very prevalent in the media following her disappearance. A short article with Cathy's picture was only printed in a small handful of local newspapers. Dissatisfied, Mr. and Mrs. Moulton contacted the director of Portland's FBI office, pleading for more to be done for their daughter. They were told that the FBI was unable to start an official investigation without evidence of an abduction, but the director managed to get Cathy's picture to appear at the end of several episodes of The FBI, a television show that was airing at the time. Back in 1971, the Portland Police Department had no funding specifically allocated for missing persons. This, combined with the fact that investigators often prematurely defined missing teenagers as runaways, meant that Cathy's case was filed with hundreds of other missing Portland teenagers, not getting the attention it deserved. The Moultons quickly gathered that they were most likely going to have to fight to find their daughter on their own. According to stories of theunsolved.com, Miss Moulton received information from a neighborhood boy who claimed that an older friend of his had given Cathy a ride on the night of her disappearance. Nothing really came of this information, though. In early November of 1971, officials at Deering High School, where Cathy was attending school, cleared out her locker and found a scrap of paper with a phone number scribbled on it. The Moultons quickly jumped on this finding, hoping it was a lead, but they were let down almost immediately when they found out that it was just the number to Mr. Moulton's workplace. Mrs. Moulton recalls this grueling time in her life, remembering how she would sit upstairs in the window all day, watching up and down the street, hoping to see Cathy walking towards the house. There were multiple reports made of people spotting a person that fit Cathy's description. One man claimed that he picked up a boy and a girl who had an unusual-looking handbag and dropped them off at a Brunswick center. Another person reported that they saw a girl who looked like Cathy hitchhiking on Route 88 in Falmouth, Maine, only a 13-minute drive from Portland. None of these reports amounted to anything, once again leaving Cathy's family feeling defeated. There was a rumor circulating in Cathy's high school after her disappearance. Many classmates had an idea that Cathy had headed or was heading south to Boston, Massachusetts. This rumor was not completely unmerited, as one of Cathy's friends recalled her being particularly interested in the city of Boston after having a conversation with another girl. This small conversation could obviously hold no value when it comes to Cathy's disappearance, but it's important to note. The Moulton family even turned to a psychic during their search for Cathy. The psychic's name was Alex Tanous, and he was described as extremely dedicated to his work, often offering his services free of charge. While driving the route that Cathy's parents presumed she took when walking home, Tanous got a sense that Cathy had been picked up by someone in a car before heading south towards Boston. Tanous's senses didn't last long, and after this, he was unable to offer up any more help to the family. No hard evidence was ever uncovered to lead the investigation to Boston, so this idea was put down as well. Another theory that popped up was that Cathy left on her own accord with one of her friends, named Lester Everett. Everett was driving a stolen 1963 blue Cadillac at the time. Evidently, there were multiple reported sightings of Cathy with Everett and another boy working in a potato farm 300 miles north of Portland. None of these claims have been confirmed, though. Authorities ended up locating Everett, but he was alone and stuck with his story that he had no idea where Cathy was. Apparently, a gas station worker in Presque Isle, Maine claimed that she'd seen Cathy with two boys. She explained that she saw one of the boys escort Cathy to the restroom, standing guard until she was out, and then promptly walk Cathy back to the car before they left. Could these two boys have been Everett and the other boy that multiple reports claimed she was with? I'm not sure if these two leads are connected, but at one point, Mr. and Mrs. Moulton were contacted by the state police and were told that there was a girl living in Presque Isle who fit the description of Cathy. After making the more than 4-hour drive north, the Moultons arrived, only to be told by the Presque Isle police that they had no idea what the family were talking about, and they hadn't even heard of Cathy's disappearance. There had seemingly been no communication between the Portland Police Department and the Presque Isle Police Department. Not wanting to waste the opportunity, her parents searched the town, going door to door and handing out flyers where they could, but this ultimately was unsuccessful. It turned out later that the girl that was presumed to be Cathy was actually another missing person, originally from Connecticut, and was returned to her family shortly after. The Moultons, while understanding of the difficulties presented to police, were extremely frustrated with the system. They contacted multiple agencies and people in positions of power, including Senator Margaret Chase Smith, but ended up no closer to finding Cathy. If the government wanted to, they'd turn hell and high water over to locate somebody, Mr. Moulton proclaimed. Just try not paying your taxes, but when it comes to missing persons, the doors are closed. We just want to know what happened to our daughter. During this entire time, and lasting years after the fact, the Moultons' home was left unlocked. The phone never left unattended. Mr. and Mrs. Moulton never left the house at the same time, ensuring someone would be home at all times to answer the phone or open the door in case Cathy turned up. Cathy's room was also left completely untouched for years in the event that she came home one day. Cathy's case went silent, as no leads were turning up. But in the 1980s it was reopened, only for investigators to find no new evidence. In 1983, 12 years after Cathy was last seen, a hunter found and reported a human skeleton surrounded with female clothing near Smyrna, Maine. I assume since it was the 80s, the hunter would most likely not have the means to contact police in the middle of the woods, so it's possible he had to leave the discovery in order to do so. I say this because, according to stories of the Unsolved.com, the hunter was unable to retrace his steps to lead police to the site. Authorities searched the area for 3 days, but were ultimately unable to find the remains. Police continued their investigation throughout the years, even with little to no new information. They interviewed and re-interviewed people who were connected to the case. It was in 2004 when police again spoke with the hunter who found the remains, and after this interview, they organized another search, this time utilizing cadaver dogs. This search also proved to be unsuccessful. To this day, the site of the remains has not been found. It is theorized by some that this skeleton belonged to Cathy, but of course, without being able to test and compare DNA, we will never truly know for sure. Cathy's DNA has been tested against numerous Jane Does found across the United States over the years, but this too provided no answers. Her dentals and DNA are still being compared to recovered remains to this day, and will continue to be. Cathy's disappearance is one of the oldest cold cases in Maine's history. In an interview with a Boston Globe reporter in 2013, Mr. Moulton expressed, quote, "One of my greatest sadnesses is that I may die, and never know what happened to Cathy, and yet I'm hopeless to change it." Sadly, Mr. Moulton's fear came true when he passed away in 2017, never finding out what happened to his daughter. Her family has always held out hope that Cathy could still be alive and found one day. As far as I know, they still live in the exact same house as they did in 1971, and they have kept their phone number the same all these years, hoping that one day Cathy will come back or at the very least reach out to them. If she is alive today, Cathy would be 68 years old. While unlikely, it is possible that she is still out there. My hope is that no matter what Cathy's fate was, her family will someday have the answers to her disappearance, and that Cathy will be brought home one day. If you have any information that could be helpful in Cathy's case, no matter how small, please contact the Portland Police Department at 207-874-8479. Thank you all for joining me for this sad story. I have a soft spot for unsolved disappearances, and the idea of just vanishing out of thin air freaks me out. I hope I could keep you entertained with this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.